Triggers. A trigger in psychology is something that happens to you, and it fills you with deep emotion, and it changes you. There are all sorts of triggers. But you know, Mother's Day is a day of deep emotion, and sometimes mixed emotions. There are some people who have reservations about their early growing up, and they wish that things might have been different. There are others who remember with deep fondness their mothers, and there are all sorts of little things that happen to us that help us to remember, and they're triggers in life. And one of the things that I hope we acknowledge today is that becoming a parent and becoming a mother is a life-changing experience. And in real, physical ways, we are changed. A change is possible. And when we begin to live our lives aware of mothers and mothers' love, the world looks different to us. And our passage today came from the prayer of Jesus at the Last Supper. And so as I was thinking about how to talk about Mother's Day and what it means for us to call it the festival of the Christian home instead of Mother's Day, that there are many things that change us. Prayer changes us, Scripture changes us, and times we serve other people and we experience life, they change us. And I want to talk about two things that recently were triggers for me. Anybody recognize this picture? It's a Justice Center. It's just 2 blocks down the road. A lot of times when people are let out of jail, they just get out of jail whatever they had in their pockets. And we happen to be the first open door 2 blocks down from the jail. We often have people come here, and in a way, we have to know what services are available, because when someone comes from the jail, we need to point them in the right direction. Help them to find the place that they need to be, help them connect them with family. Now this was a trigger for me. Last Mother's Day, we went out, had a nice dinner. I don't remember where we went, but it caused us to drive down around the square by the Justice Center. We came down the other road over here. Was that Grant, maybe? And I was moved by the whole line of people who were lined up at that door right there to visit on Mother's Day. A whole line of mothers going in to see their children. And that put a different perspective on Mother's Day for me. And the enduring love of mothers in all circumstances. This is the recent collapse of a factory in Bangladesh. You see all these people. There were hundreds of thousands of people who gathered around that building. People in that building all had mothers. Many of the people who gathered there were children of mothers that were in there. And if we look at this maybe in some other light, it looks different to us. But when we look at it in the light of mother's love, that's somehow the reality of life, the reality of the situation is more powerful to us. It's a trigger, we think, of our own relationship with our mothers and what that So today, think about what Jesus was saying in our passage about the attitude of us. Love the other. Look at the world as if we are all brothers and sisters. Does anybody know what the motto of UCC is? We kind of got the neat UCC symbol on our pulpit without the words. What is the motto that goes around the bottom of the world? That they may all be one. Right. And I've got a picture of it. That they may all be one. Notice how today I had the bold print. It was all the passages where you had to say that you were all one. Did you notice that? That they may all be one. One family. That you might look at the world and its circumstances as if everyone is our brother and sister. And what does that mean when sometimes we look out at the world? And communion and baptism are ways that we acknowledge that. CNN had a very interesting article the other day. And the article was "The Man Who Lied to His Laptop: What Machines Teach Us About Human Relationships." Did you know that a woman's voice is always the default on the GPS? Is that true on your GPS? Now listen to this. They put in a lot of research to decide what kind of a voice to put on the GPS. A lot of research. And scientific studies have shown that people find women's voices more pleasing than men's. It's much easier to find a female voice that everyone likes than a male voice that everyone likes. That's according to a Stanford University study. And almost all GPS navigation systems on the market, the default voice is female. Think about it. Probably yours. Right? How many have a female default? No? Anybody have a male? You have a male default? Oh. How many of you just have a backseat driver? We can all say, when the GPS breaks, we're in trouble, right? Now, I really did go a funny part. Now, there's a notable exception, and that's in Germany. BMW was forced to recall a female voice navigation system in the late 1990s on all their cars after they were flooded with calls from German men saying they refused to take directions from a woman. That's true. It's on CNN report. Look it up. Look it up. The man who lied to his laptop. But I got to think about this. It's true, isn't it? Think about this. Data well kind of our mother with us, and we do all these kinds of things so that that would happen. Now this is the change part. I thought this was kind of fun. There's all sorts of things. I used to have something in myself that I put it into children. Many of you can relate to that e-card that's traveling around the internet. But I want to ask you, has anybody here read the book Mommy Brain? There's a book that's called Mommy Brain, written by a neurologist, and it is true that women's brains change when they have children. It's true. And there are some parts of their brain that are less active, but the parts for compassion and nurturing grow, actually. And they can prove this by brain scans, that there are actual changes that happen when someone becomes a mother, when someone's pregnant. And this happens to us in many circumstances. It happens to us when we see things in the world and we're moved with compassion. We actually change. And so of all the circumstances in our lives that make dramatic changes in people's lives, think about what motherhood has done for change in people's lives. How you know people who actually changed because of it. Dalai Lama, he said, women have a special capacity to lead us to a more peaceful world with compassion, affection, and kindness. Does anybody know who that is? This woman, what she has to do with Mother's Day? No. There was a lady in Grafton, West Virginia, started the official Mother's Day. Does anybody know who this is? This is an early pioneer for Mother's Day. Julia Ward Howe. You know who Julia Ward Howe is? She was the daughter of a congregational minister in our tradition, United Church of Christ Roots. And she actually wrote the hymn that most people know her famous for, Vowing Republic. And also was an ardent abolitionist in her day. Now, after the Civil War, she wrote a poem that was the foundation of the movement to create a Mother's Day. She had a Mother's Day proclamation in 1870. And she said,